All right, we're on the Bible Forum. It's Sunday night. It's August the 13th. We got a little chaos in the system, but other than that, everything is working out pretty good. Uh, all I have to do is make sure that I've got my sound turned down over here so you can't hear what I'm saying while we're saying it. And then maybe everything else will work out the way it's supposed to. Well, we learned this week. We got a lot of stuff here, but we learned this week that in Illinois, August the 4th, beginning next year, will be Barack Obama Day. I, for one, am glad I'm not living in Illinois. But it was unanimous. The board, they got together, they did the whole thing. It's only the right thing to do. Illinois Governor Bruce Rauner, who's a Republican, signed the bill into law, establishing that day, Obama's birthday, as the Prairie State's Barack Obama Day. Senate Bill 55, in part, reads that the holiday will be observed throughout the state as a day set apart to honor our 44th President of the United States, who began his career serving the people of Illinois, both in the Illinois State Senate, the United States Senate, and dedicating his life to protecting the rights of minority Americans and building bridges across communities. I would think that's for the purpose of providing minority community, white, black, yellow, brown, giving everybody a slice of the pie by taking away from those who were industrious and mistakenly believed that responsibility was theirs. No, that's not in the bill. That's what I think. They didn't say that sort of stuff. We talked a little bit last week about the grain of sand like item that was being implanted in people's hands, or could be, to do a whole bunch of stuff. Well, this is growing. Today we have something called a tech tat. In a few years, you probably will understand that term a little bit more specifically. These are ultra thin graphene tattoos generated into a regular tattoo that can fully conform to the skin. And all of this is for what? Well, a lot of different things. Credit card information, personal ID, medical information, the monitoring of your vital signs in real time. The ultra-thin tattoo can be applied to the skin with water. It is almost transparent and yet could surpass the functions of today's much bulkier wearable devices. The advantage in these ultra-thin graphene tattoos is that they can fully conform to the skin while offering medical-grade data quality, as opposed to the lower performance of the rigid electrode sensors mounted on bands and strapped to wrists or chests or whatever. We're moving forward, people. Delta Airlines is rolling out their new program. It's called a pilot program. I thought that was kind of interesting. At Minneapolis St. Paul Airport. It's essentially for priority customers. It consists of automated baggage kiosks that will first scan the traveler's passport and then scan their face. The goal here is to match the identity to the checked luggage. The program has now entered phase 2 at Reagan National Airport with biometric boarding passes, only for rewards members. Google just fired an employee this week for expressing the obvious. If you were listening to Rush this week, he actually foretold this. He read the memo, the excerpt of the memo, this was about 9 pages, that this fellow wrote, and he said, they're going to fire him. And about 2 days later, they did. Well, his observation was that women tend to be less interested in technical disciplines than are men. The average Google, or not average, but apparently Google only has 30% of its technical employees who identify as female. We have to say it like that now, because we don't know what we're talking about. At issue here is everything from questions of free speech, employment at will, and labor relations. From there to questions of hostile environment, affirmative action, and retaliatory discharge. Google's firing of James Damore has it all. And it's going to be a fascinating ride. Already it's starting to have a kickback. The people at Google agree with, the employees at Google agree with James. They said these people are discriminating against women. No, women are not as interested in these things. But you can't say that anymore. There's no difference between men and women. Yeah, there is. One has babies, the other doesn't. Did you know there's a solar eclipse coming at the end of August? We here in Charleston know that in spades, as they say. Experts are expecting at least 1 million visitors to our little town that weekend. It's going to be dark, various degrees of dark for a couple hours on and off. They're shutting down the schools because of all the traffic that's going to be coming and going. And you say, what's the big deal? We've been through this before. We've seen it all, haven't we? Well, apparently not. Because now we have so-called prophecy experts chiming in. WorldNetDaily.com asked one of their leading lights, an author, so-called pastor, I suppose, religious type by the name of Mark Biltz. And Mark is the man who discovered the blood moons phenomenon that was largely a bust, but he got a lot of money for the books and he wrote and the interviews and all the rest of it. The writer of this particular article says that Biltz normally shies away from specific predictions of this kind. I don't know, I could have sworn he doesn't miss commenting on any and all of these kinds of things, but that's my personal observation. Biltz argues that while these things may be simply natural phenomena, it is misguided to just laugh them off as extraordinary signs in the heavens having no meaning. He says, quote, as far as how I respond to those who are laughing at the idea of an eclipse could mean something. Well, it depends on who's doing the laughing or the mocking. He says this is a big message from God. What happened when 2 homeschooled students showed up at a Downingtown, Pennsylvania high school in the midst of their Holocaust symposium? Well, the folks at the high school, were talking about what the Nazis did to Jews before and during World War II. The homeschoolers were there to highlight what we have been doing to unborn children for the last 40 plus years. And they had the casualty numbers to prove it. Casualty numbers that are far greater than any that showed up in a crematoria. Did you know church members regularly, routinely steal from their church offerings? They do that in your church? You might not know it. Well, the statistics are in, and they're not as big as you might think. I mean, it's a big build-up, people are stealing, but it's less than 20% in the worst case scenarios. And the best is within evangelical church at an 8% level. But the question becomes why? The how is not so hard to figure out. In most churches, this process is not seriously regulated, nor is it monitored. You know, there's actually a poll out on this stuff. We're going to talk about it. How much authority over your child does the state have? Can they facilitate a sex change operation on your child without your permission? Well, in Minnesota, that's exactly what they did. The state moved in and declared the children, I forgot what the term is now, but they severed the child's relationship with the parents as far as legalities are concerned, because they said the parents were not doing a good job. And then after they got control or authority over this child, they gave this child a sex change, the one they wanted. Now, my memory isn't that great, but I believe it's because the child wanted a sex change operation. This is a 12, 14-year-old kid who doesn't even know what time it is. And they want a sex change operation. The parents are saying no, the state takes over the kids and gives it to them. Well, that's only in Minnesota, right? So far. What's the major criticism of this, the Bible Forum? I'm talking about folks who comment on the YouTubes and on the Facebook posts. You might be surprised to learn that they all criticize me for knowing how to read. I'm as shocked as you are. They say I don't understand the Bible. They say I don't understand Christianity. They say I don't understand Islam. I don't understand spiritual gifting. I don't understand contemporary worship. I don't understand those things because I know how to read. They apparently know how to feel. I know I'm on the right track. And before we leave here tonight, I'm going to tell you about it. We'll talk about the what and the why. In Birmingham, Alabama, 21st century activists are seeking to topple monuments. In the 19th century Confederate rebellion, some white Southerners are again advocating for what the Confederates tried and failed to do, and that is to secede from the Union. Now, we saw some of this again up in Virginia on Saturday, and a poor woman got killed. A guy drove into a crowd of people, and they were trying to remove the statue. I've forgotten now who it was. Robert E. Lee, maybe? It's Virginia. And they were up there to say, no, you can't do that. Well, this is in Alabama. The League of the South's longtime president, retired university professor Michael Hill of Killen, Alabama, posted a message in July that said, quote, "Fight or die, white man," end of quote. And then went on to say that Southern nationalists see, quote, "nothing less than the complete reconquest and restoration of our patrimony, the whole entire South." He says, and what that means is that the South will once again be in name and in actuality white man's land. Yeah, in the 21st century. Now, all sorts of people are tired of living under a democratic oligarchy. An oligarchy is a form of government whereby the governors tell the governed what they can and cannot be and do. We looked at this issue a little bit last week. Not going to rehash it all, but check the video. The reality is, in the South, the economy depended upon slaves. Southerners, out of necessity, embraced Darwinian philosophy. They considered the black man less than human. He was still evolving, and therefore couldn't be expected to govern himself. Now today, all those issues have kind of faded. And contemporary secessionists simply want the government to stop interfering in their lives. The black community, they are still largely struggling for worth in the eyes of the majority population. They have worth in the eyes of the majority population and they could have greater worth if they would just stop struggling. If the progressive Democrats had done right, they'd have it all by now, wouldn't they? I don't think so. We got a lot of show to cover. We're going to start it right now.